Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players, uncover their stories, and discover what makes them tick. If you love guitar, music, and the backstory of people's lives, stick around. You're in the right place. The Be Fulfilled Journal helps you be more honest with yourself and with others and be more open to handling things you've avoided dealing with for years. It's a 12-week online and journal program that helps you identify and eliminate things you do that are causing you stress and live in more gratitude and joy. It was actually developed by a long-term friend of mine who got sober in 2008, and he's put together a great deal just for my listeners. You get the 300-page hardcover journal and access to the 12-week video program online, plus free shipping, plus membership in a private Facebook support group with others going through the program, plus a 5-day mini course showing you how to let go of stuff that's draining your energy, plus a 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. To start your journey and get all the bonuses, go to BeFulfilledJournal.com/ELG. That's BeFulfilledJournal.com/ELG. For information about advertising on Everyone Loves Guitar, including information on geographically targeted ads, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, and I got to recompose myself. I'm with Carl Orr today. He's not only a lovely guy, a brilliant guitar player, but he's got some great vibes he's going to send our way today. But we were just laughing so hard, I don't even think I could pick my head up and look at him because I will just turn into a bowl of jelly here. Oh, good Lord. Anyway, I just want to thank Les Davidson for hooking us up. Thanks a lot, Les. Anyway, let me tell you about Carl and we'll get into it. He's a jazz rock guitarist. He's been a professional musician since 1980. He just told me he started playing guitar at age 2. We were talking before the call started. He's performed and recorded with some of the finest musicians on the planet, including Billy Cobham, who's opening for Carl at Ronnie Scott's in June. So we'll talk about that too. He's also played with George Duke, Ernie Watts, Randy Brecker, and Bennie Maupin. He's a prolific composer. He's recorded 9 albums as a leader, and he's also featured on albums by Billy Cobham, Fletcher's Brew, Dudley Phillips, and Nathan Haynes. He arranged a lot of the exam pieces for the Rock School acoustic guitar curriculum, and he's writing a lengthy and thorough book on guitar improvisations that he expects to finish, he said, at 2025, at some point in time in the future. He's also got a cool Patreon program coming up soon, and we'll talk about that as well. He's got a broad range of musical interests, and his jazz-based compositions reveal influences of funk, pop, classical, and rock, as well as traditional music from around the world. And I was telling him before we started that one of the cool things about his music is that I find oftentimes when you hear traditional music, or just call it cultural folk music, if you want to call it that, from various parts of the world, it's really nice, but it's not really integrated with whatever the musician's playing. In Carl's case, it's jazz and rock. He did a great job on his album that's going to be released soon called Somewhere Else. And it makes really a lot of different cultural music extremely melodic and accessible. And we'll talk about that in a bit. He's performed at Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club over 300 times. Is that a record?
No. I know a guy who's played there 500 times.
Wow, that's amazing, man. That's huge. And he's played at many of the world's leading jazz festivals, including Montreux, North Sea, Kuala Lumpur, and Victoria. Gasteiz? Gasteiz. Where is that?
It's in northern Spain.
Very cool. And there you go. Carl, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate you coming on the show. And we share the same barber as well, so that's another good thing we have in common.
Man of taste.
Absolutely. Man, how you doing today? Everything good?
Yeah, really great. Thank you.
Good. So what was your first major gig and how'd you get it?
My first major gig was with Billy Cobham.
That was your first gig? First major gig?
First major gig.
Wow. That's baptism by fire, man.
Yeah. Well, what happened was I when I was a teenager, my dad could see that I was very serious about music, and he told me that I should read biographies and autobiographies of great musicians in order to find out how they tick.
Wow.
Which was a really great thing to do.
What did your dad do? That's really insightful.
My dad was, when he was working, was an electrician, but he just my dad's a very insightful guy, you know. Incredible. And anyway, he said that's what I should do, and I did. I read the biography of Charlie Parker, Bird Lives, and I read Duke Ellington's autobiography, Dizzy Gillespie's autobiography, and biographies of Billie Holiday, lots of people. And also I was reading Downbeat magazine by then. I bought a few other jazz books. And what I realized was that the first thing was, you had to be a high standard. So practicing and, get yourself up to a good standard. But the other thing was that the musicians always talked about a thing they call paying your dues, pay your dues. And paying your dues is playing with older, more experienced musicians than yourself. And in addition to your personal practice, you're learning on stage and getting advice and learning how to work within the context of a band. And so I learned that. And then I also learned that paying your dues, getting in these very beneficial learning situation isn't just handed to you on a plate. You have to go out. You have to go to music venues and introduce yourself to people, So I learned this very early on, and I actually started doing that very young, going out to music venues and introducing myself to musicians, and it served me well, and I was living in Sydney, Australia at the time where I grew up, and I was going around to all the music venues and trying to get an idea about how the scene was, and I figured out that the guy in Sydney to play with was a man named Jack Ozarski. That's spelled Orszaczky, Jack Ozarski, and he was the guy to play with. He was a sort of Miles Davis of Australia in a way. He was like a magnet for young, serious musicians. He wasn't a jazz musician. He was more like a funk musician, and he had been a musical director for a pop star called Marsha Hines, and then he'd gone off on his own, and he played kind of funk music, and he played some covers like Tower of Power, sure, and Sly Stone and James Brown, and then some original music as well. But it was just a fantastic training ground as a musician to play with very high caliber of musicians. And also it meant that your reputation as a musician immediately, if you associate with him, you're immediately taken seriously, Yeah. So anyway, it took me a while to get in his band. I would go to see him play about at least once a month, maybe twice a month, for a few years, maybe 3 or 4 years. And then after 4 years, he asked me to play on this recording that he was doing.
That's paying dues, man. 4 years. That's freaking persistence and determination, man. Good for you.
And all the while I was playing and doing other gigs and writing tunes and teaching guitar and everything. But I had my mind single-mindedly set on playing with him. Anyway, so I eventually I played on a recording with him, and then about a year and a half later, he decided to replace the guitarist who was in his band with me. So that was a very fortunate thing. So that was great. But the good thing was that immediately put me onto the level of being somebody who was respected as a musician in Sydney. Anyway, the manager of the band, who was also his girlfriend, her name is Frankie Lee. She was the booking agent for the venue where we had our regular Saturday night gig. We had the Saturday night gig at this place called the Harbourside Brasserie from midnight till 3 or something like that. And it was really great. It was like the best gig in town, you know, and it was the gig everybody would have liked to have done, you know. So she was booking that, and she got all sorts of bands coming in. And then one time she rang me up. This was in late 1989, and she said, "How would you like to play with Billy Cobham?" And I'd been a huge fan of, well, the Mahavishnu Orchestra in particular, and also a huge fan of Billy Cobham himself.
That Spectrum record is just...
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the
Tommy
great...
Bolin is amazing on there, man.
Yeah, anyway, so this was in about November or December 1989. And she said, you know, Billy Cobham's coming out in April, and he's just doing a drum clinic tour. So he's not bringing a band, but he wants to do some gigs. So while he's in Sydney, would you like to do it? And I said, yeah. And she said, would you like to book the rest of the band? And I said, yeah, that's great. You know, so I booked all the musicians. And anyway, in April 1990, that's 29 years ago this month, we did 3 gigs, and they went extremely well, and Billy really seemed to like me and my playing. And then he gave us his business card so we could stay in touch. And then a couple of months later, a friend of mine from Sydney told me that he had been to the Frankfurt Music Mess, which is that trade show, like the European version of NAMM.
Sure.
And he said he'd been to Frankfurt and he bumped into Billy Cobham there. And he said to me, I met Billy Cobham and he really likes you. He likes you and he likes your playing. He said, I think you should stay in touch with him. And I thought, oh, okay. So I had Billy's business card, and I had just recorded my first album, and I sent him a CD of my first album. And he sent me a postcard, thanking me for the album. And then the following year, 1991, I went on holiday to New York, and Billy lives in Switzerland, but he just happened to be in New York playing at the Blue Note.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah, so I went to see him twice at the Blue Note, and he was really happy to see me. And then I'd send him my second album. He thanked me for that. And then I made my third album called Mean It in 1993, and it came out at the beginning of 94. And I sent it to him, sent him a copy, and he rang me up. And he said, Carl, I really like this a lot. I want to come down to Australia and play with you again. And so in 1995, beginning of 95, we did an Australian tour. And then I told him, look, I'm going to move to London later this year. Me and my wife and daughter were going to move to London. And he said to me, well, make sure you stay in touch. So I did. So I arrived in London. I came a little bit before my wife and daughter. I arrived in early October 95. And I rang him from a payphone because I didn't have a cell phone then. And he was quite happy to talk to me. You know, how you doing, Carl? And I said, oh, I'm in London. He said, okay, man, good to hear from you. And then I made a determination, like a resolution, to ring him every 2 months until he either gave me the gig or told me to go away.
Yeah.
So I did. I rang him every 2 months. So I rang him in. So that was October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. Yeah, the 6th phone call, he sent me a fax saying that he had a European tour, a tour of Switzerland and Austria in November of that year, November 96, finishing on the 1st of December. And he would like me to do it. So that was that. So I went off and did this tour with him, and it was really great. And then I wound up with him for 3.5 years from that point.
Man, first of all, thank you. That was a wonderful. I want to have a bunch of questions. That story was wonderful on every freaking level, man. I am so happy that you did all that. Okay, so first of all, kudos to your dad.
Yeah.
Seriously, for like basically changing your entire life.
Yeah, absolutely.
What incredible, what wisdom that was, you know, read biographies of famous people, man, that you want to be like, so you could find out about them. Because a lot of times, and everybody listening to this should pay really close attention, because, you know, people think, well, I want to do this, but I don't know, or this person's inaccessible, or this lifestyle is inaccessible. And I think that's bullshit. I think you can make anything possible. And you read books. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's not something anybody else can't do, you know, but you did it. The other thing you did, and then you started noticing patterns, pay your dues, you know, play with people better than you, go to venues, introduce yourself. So are you outgoing by nature? Because that's a big thing for a young kid, especially. It could be very intimidating to go and introduce yourself to these guys that are sort of like your idols in a sense, you know, or they're not your peers, they're people you're looking up to aspire to.
I'm not outgoing at all. I'm quite an introverted person, but my desire to be a great musician and to play with the best musicians has been the thing that's been my most overwhelming, my constant thought since I was a boy. And let's say I have 51% desire for musical greatness and 49% fear. And I definitely have a full 49% fear. If the balance is tipped the other way and you have 51% fear, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
But I just happen to have 51% burning desire and 49% self-doubt and fear and all the rest of the crap, you know. So my desire for musical greatness and to be around great musicians is just a tiny bit bigger than my fear.
That's good.
So that's what it is, you know.
And you know what? That's how most decisions get made. When the pain of not doing something is greater, the pain of not introducing yourself to these people was far greater than the pain of introducing them, but the potential payoff.
Yeah.
You know, so that's great, man. That is very cool. The other thing that was really impressive was your persistence, your patience, and the fact that you didn't give up.
Yeah.
That was like, are you the kind of person that a lot of times people, they make that one call, they call Billy once.
Yeah.
And, oh, well, he likes my playing, but he didn't ask me. Oh, well, I tried. But you didn't do that. You stayed in touch with him over a period of years. And then once you moved to London, you said, I'm going to really focus on this and talk to him every 2 months.
Yeah, well, it took me 6 years from the time I met him.
Yeah.
It was more than 6 years until I joined his band. But I mean, the reason I have such courage to do that is because I practice Buddhism. I've been practicing Nichiren Buddhism for a long time, and I summon up the courage I need to do the things I need to do through that. And there's one of many quotations from Buddhist writings that have inspired me, and one of them is, if you fall down 10 times, get up 11 times, you know. which is so great, you know. And I just feel like that's basically how life is, you know. You strike out 10 times, well, do 11 times then, you know. And so the Buddhist practice, when I first of all, I'd sit and do my Buddhist chanting before I'd make a phone call for a good half an hour to get myself in the most positive frame of mind and to really not say anything stupid or for him to feel like I'm wasting his time, so that I'm absolutely clear and focused, and he feels like his time is well spent even just talking with me for 2 minutes, you know, like it's not a waste of his time and energy. You know, so that's an important thing for me, you know.
I want to say something about that. That's incredibly important, just your whole mindset about it, because you weren't thinking about what's in this for me. You were thinking about like an extremely of service mentality. I want to make sure he feels good about this conversation. There's a huge difference in there when you're making a phone call about, hey, man, what can I get out of this versus, hey, I want to give. You know, I mean, like karmically, it's a totally different thing. You know, I want to put out something good that he enjoys, even in this little conversation, because that's what it's all about. Sure, I have an end goal and I'd like to do this, but really I'm putting him ahead of me. I think that's a huge difference in approach, and the vibes you're going to put out on that call are going to be night and day versus the guy, hey man, how you doing? You know, got anything? You know, like, or even if you're not saying that, but that's in your, you know, and the fact that you put that much effort into it, you said, hey, let me psych myself up. Let me get into the right state. Let me put the time and energy in this. That's paying your dues as far as I'm concerned, to be honest with you. That's all part of it.
Yeah.
Wow. Good for you. You played with him April 90. Do you still have that postcard he sent you?
I've got everything.
Yeah, man, that's got to be pretty cool, right? When you got that postcard, it must have felt like $1 million, no?
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's so cool. My postcard from Billy. He's got it. He's got it. In the Billy Cobham box right here, man.
Billy Cobham and others. Yeah, go on, keep talking. I'll see if I can find it while we talk.
What made you move to London in October of '95? Made you leave Sydney?
I'd been living in Sydney for a while, and I didn't want to leave Sydney because I really love it, but I sort of felt like I'd run out of. I'd sort of done everything I could do, and I was trying to keep going.
So musically, there he goes. I'm looking at the postcard. Oh my God! So it's a postcard with a photo of Indonesia.
Yeah, he was on the road and he sent it to me from the road. Yeah.
That is so cool, man. Thank you. That is really cool. That's awesome, Carl. Those are great stories. So you moved to London. What made you pick London, though, as opposed to, like, did you have family there, or like, are your folks English? Or
well, I was born in Britain, in Newcastle.
Oh, okay.
North England, so it was easy. And I felt like I could handle it. I'd been to the States. I went to Berklee College of Music.
Right.
And I'd been to the States, and I just couldn't, as much as I wanted it, I just couldn't see myself living there. I just couldn't, you know, and you just can't picture something in your mind, and I just couldn't picture it, you know. And I thought, well, I can imagine myself living in London, you know. And it wasn't that I thought London was better than New York or Los Angeles. In fact, I thought it was probably worse. But just as a place to live, I just could imagine myself living in London better. And I think I really made the right decision. London really suits me. You know?
Good. And you're pretty intuitive, I get, from just all the just our general conversation and the stuff I read and the music I listened to. You're pretty intuitive. I think you probably just think about things and go with whatever vibe feels good. Is that a reasonably accurate statement?
Yeah, I do. I'm not like I do think one of the odder phenomena of modern times is that we're living in a very information-based period, which apparently you know, some people could see coming back in the 60s as like all this information. And it seems to me that, one of the things I learned from the old guys, you know, was they didn't really have a lot of music education, like Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and Thelonious Monk and these amazing musical innovators who really created modern jazz, and Duke Ellington and those amazing people before them. They weren't really, they weren't illiterate, but they had a kind of a basic grounding in, let's say, classical music training. And then they just kind of used their remarkable intelligence and instincts to develop that, you know. And so there was a combination of like enough music education to get a good grounding, but then you're using your own initiative and instincts to figure out the rest, you know. And I was very influenced by that, you know. I mean, like when you look at somebody like say Duke Ellington. I mean, before I mean, I'm not any expert on Duke Ellington, but he had to invent jazz big band arranging because it didn't exist before him. Yeah. And I mean, he had like a basic musical training, but then the rest of it was just his hard work, you know. And I just thought, well, okay, well, I'll get a basic, thorough grounding in music, and then I'll just work hard. And that's what I've done, you know. So I do think that one of the things the modern age that I'm not that really impressed with is there's too much information, and people are too obsessed with theory. Because, I mean, to me, theory, I know loads of theory, but it's not something I talk about or think about so much. It's just something that's there, you know, and it's very useful. But there's this kind of really, like, guitarists are always talking about the Dorian mode and stuff like this. Is like, I mean, yeah, sure, but the Dorian mode is 7 notes. It's not really that clever, you know. If you learn a song, any song, it's got much more than 7 notes in it. There's much more to it, you know. But people sort of bandy these theoretical terms around as if it's something clever. It's like, man, actually 7 notes is really not that clever, you know. Right. What's clever is like if you're Paul McCartney,
there you go,
or Duke Ellington, and you can put something like, you know, like Hey Jude together, or you know, like writing a really substantial song. To me, that's really clever.
Right,
you know,
right.
Like talking about the Dorian mode and the Locrian mode and bandying musical terms around is just, it's just, not only is it doesn't really get you anywhere, but also this sort of pretense of being clever, which is kind of very prevalent. I just think people are doing themselves a real disservice with this stuff, you know. And I think, okay, learn your modes. Yeah, you got to learn your modes, but it's just like you learn the alphabet, but you don't go around reciting it all day, you know. But just, you know, of course you learn your modes, just like you learn how to spell, you know. But you don't, you know, like there's a lot of hang-ups about just theoretical material, which is actually very simple and not very interesting. And I think, to me, the intuitive, he says very intuitive. Well, the thing is, it's like, well, you just get your basic information. And then, to me, the thing you do is you learn a ton of songs, which is what I did. I know so many songs from jazz standards to Bob Marley songs to Cream songs to you know, Steely Dan songs, to Led Zeppelin songs. I know a ton of songs, hundreds of songs, and you learn so much about music without even really studying, just by learning a load of songs. You know, you don't even know what you're learning half the time, but you think, oh, that's interesting. And I mean, one of the things that was the biggest music lesson of all for me, I think probably the biggest music lesson of all, was I had some great music teachers in school, in high school, and I kept in contact with a couple of them, and one of them passed away, but the other one I'm still in touch with.
From Sydney?
From Adelaide. I grew up in Adelaide, then I moved to Sydney. So, yeah, from Australia. Anyway, the biggest music lesson I learned was one of my teachers told me that the thing that made the Beatles interesting was how they introduced odd bar numbered section length. So, for example, what you call measures, right? So if you look at the song Yesterday, the A section, the main section of the song, is 7 measures long. It's not 8 measures.
Oh.
So,
awesome. Carl's pulling out his guitar.
Yeah, so count the bars. Yesterday, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yesterday, 3, 4. 3.
That's right, man. 7 bars.
Yeah,
that's
like
crazy.
The most thing in the world, doesn't it?
Yeah. Holy shit, that's really wild. I never thought about that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that stuff in the Beatles songs, like It Won't Be Long, you know. So that's a 3-bar phrase and a 4-bar phrase.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah. So the Beatles songs there's a lot of that kind of thing, and that was a huge lesson for me. Like, if you want to create something that's musically interesting, something that is slightly asymmetrical is more interesting. Like, for example, like if I look out my window, there's a few trees, and they all look really amazing, but the shapes of the trees there's a kind of uniformity to them, but they're quite unpredictable. You can't guess where something would be, and some of the trees have a branch going out in a slightly funny place, you know, and it's really interesting, you know. And it's the same in music, you know. We're not interested in little square boxes of 4. It gets really boring. And I think, I mean, the other thing that I find really interesting as an example of form is what's the most common song form that you can think of?
Blues.
The blues, right? Now, the blues, it's the 12-bar blues. It's not the 16-bar blues.
Right.
It's a multiple of 4, but it's also a multiple of 3.
Yeah.
To me, that's really interesting. Why is it that the song structure that is the most beloved, the most
tangible and accessible, as a matter of fact,
it's a multiple of 3 as well as a multiple of 4. I think, to me, that's very interesting. Now, if you look at a basic 12-bar blues, it's got a harmonic rhythm that accelerates. Like, for example, the first chord, let's say we're in A, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1.
So you go from they have little sections of one each. Yeah.
So the first chord at the beginning of the form is 4 bars long.
Right.
Then the next chord is 2 bars long, and the next chord is 2 bars long, and the next chord is 1 bar, 1 bar, 1 bar, 1. And there's something about that acceleration of how close the chords are together that creates tension at the end of the form, which is then released at the beginning of the next round of the form. What a massive music lesson that is.
When you're writing, I guess you've probably been doing it long enough. I'm assuming you like to play with stuff like this. How do you do that and keep it in mind so that it's natural, as opposed to, oh, I got to make sure I change the, make this a 7 bars, so it's not like.
Yeah, well, I don't do it. I don't do it in a deliberate way, but I always write. I always write on paper. I use a computer to demo things and to sort of help with the writing, but I never completely drop the pencil and paper. I always have the pencil and paper, and I always write it out with 4 bars on each line.
Yeah.
So that I can see how many bars the sections are. So then sometimes I realize that I'm getting a bit bogged down, and it's usually because the form is not working somehow. Like maybe I'm using a particular harmonic rhythm too much, like harmonic rhythm being the rate at which the chords go by. I usually find that when I'm stuck on a song, it's the harmonic rhythm being too repetitive. And I know this sounds very analytical, but it's only when I get to the point where I go, oh, I'm getting stuck, that I actually sit down and look at the page. Like, for example, this is what I'm writing now. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, he's got the sheet music there. Yeah,
so if you look at the third system from the top, you can see the double bar line there.
Yeah.
Halfway across and that's because this is where the end of that section
the phrase that you're taught,
Yeah, and I didn't realize that that's where it was until I'd marked it, until I'd listened to it a few times, and then I marked it in, and it was after 10 bars, which is a slightly odd number. And wasn't done very deliberately, but I was getting kind of bogged down, and I thought, oh, yeah, this is because I'm not understanding where the phrase is finishing. And then I marked it in on the paper, and I was able to continue from there. So I do think a lot about that, but it's not in an analytical way.
No, but you have to have some way of saying what's going on here, what's working, what's not working.
Well, listen, here we go. Here's another Beatles one. Who knows how many? I've never even counted the bars in this.
Is that 9?
What is it? I don't know. I didn't even. But it's just got such a wild, rambling shape. It reminds me of if I look out my window, there's a kind of misshapen tree trunk, and it reminds me of a musical equivalent of that.
Yeah. But how great did it sound?
Yeah, so this is the sort of thing I think about, but it's all very intuitive, and I don't actually think about it until I get to a point where I think, this isn't working.
Yeah.
And so, and sometimes I never reach that point. I just write the song and it just flows out,
It's interesting. I'm the same way. I write everything on paper, like business stuff. And in fact, I have a digital calendar, but I have an actual hard copy calendar because I don't know. There's something about putting pen to paper that, for me, it's more of a connection, and I could see a flow and yes, no. And, I just can't do everything on a screen. I like to write stuff.
Yeah.
It's just,
I mean, the
almost
reason
like a connection, like a mind body connection sort of.
Well, I think also apart from that, when you have digital gear to hand, like we all do, everything sounds great. Like if you play a really boring chord sequence into your computer using Logic with beautiful string sounds, sounds like they're like the London Symphony Orchestra. It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
But then actually, if you play the same chord progression on your acoustic guitar, it's like, man, this is so boring. So, and that's why I do it, because I wrote a couple of things. I thought, man, there's something about this song that's not doing it. And then I thought, yeah, you're in love with the sound of this violin section playing your boring chords.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when you're talking about how, with theory and stuff, like about modes and stuff. I don't think Jeff Beck is sitting there thinking about, I got to stay in Phrygian mode here when he's playing. He's coming right from the heart and soul, and not that he doesn't know those things, but he's not thinking about that for sure, man. He's thinking about, how can I be Jeff Beck and do my thing here?
He came to hear me play a few years ago, and I didn't know it.
At Ronnie Scott's?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Oh my God!
Because what happened? Yeah, the bass player who plays in my band sometimes, Giovanni Pilotti, was.
Is that the guy that lives here?
No, Giovanni lives in. He lives in Italy now, but he got a call to play on the new Jeff Beck album, and when he walked into the room, Jeff Beck said, I recognize you from when I went to see Carl Orr at Ronnie Scott's.
Wow.
Yeah, so I didn't even know it was there. And he said, and Giovanni asked him if he liked it, and he said, yeah, I did. Yeah.
That's great, man.
Anyway,
Him and Hillman, there's two beacons for me that I'm hoping. I don't think it'll happen with Gilmour, but Gilmour and Beck, I'd love to have them here on my show to talk to them. I don't think it'll happen with Gilmour because I think he's reclusive pretty much. Jeff seems to be pretty reclusive too, but I'm circling the Gilmour camp. I've had this drummer and Guy on, Guy Pratt. So, but those guys are just incredible, just so intuitive. You talk about a guy like Gilmour who doesn't necessarily play anything complicated, but man, what an economical, beautiful player that guy is, man.
He's got I mean, what I would say about Dave Gilmour, he's got great taste.
Oh,
he's great. Sometimes you get people that play good, but they don't really have what I would call great taste in music. Whereas I think Dave Gilmour's got really good taste. Oh. You never hear Dave Gilmour and think anything less than, wow, that sounds fantastic.
Every note is right.
Yeah, and he gets a perfect guitar sound.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, David Gilmour's got great taste.
Yeah.
That's the thing that really sets him apart.
Thank you for explaining all that. That was really cool, man. And thanks for playing. That sounded great. Talk about some of the other folks you've worked with, like how you got the gig and maybe a cool or interesting story. And let's start with Sting, because you played on his play, if I'm not mistaken, in London, right? In
UK tour, yeah, the Last Ship.
Right. Talk about that.
Which had a run on Broadway a few years ago, about 5 years ago. And they brought it over to Britain last year, March last year, and they gave the musical director of finding a guitarist, finding a band for it, and bizarrely he couldn't find a guitarist. Like all the sort of West End guys who normally do that sort of work were busy, and he couldn't find any of them. And he sort of tried everybody he could think of and asked around, and he couldn't find anybody. And then
I'm surprised the guys from America didn't come over, because I've interviewed a bunch of them that have played on that.
Well, Ben Butler.
Yeah, Ben played, and Ben's from Australia.
Well, this is what happened, you see, because what happened is
did you know Ben as a
yeah? Well, they ran out of ideas, and they thought, well, let's ask Ben Butler if he knows anybody in London who could do it. And Ben recommended me.
Oh man, how cool is that?
And he sent Rob Mathis, who's Sting's musical director, an amazing arranger, orchestrator, guitarist, pianist, singer, man of many talents. Who's Sting's right-hand man, and he sent him a couple of YouTube clips of tracks from my Forbearance album where I'm playing acoustic guitar, and Rob liked it and they got me in to do the tour, and it was really great. I'm a big fan of Sting, and I must say I loved every second of playing that music. I enjoyed every single second of every song. It's such a blast, you know. And the thing that was really the best for me was that Sting is such a real gentleman of a guy, you know, and I really hit it off with him, you know. I think probably most people do, but he was very encouraging, you know. And the first time I met him, I went to the place where they were rehearsing, which was a sort of a basement rehearsal studio in a theatre in London. It's a music venue, but it's also a chapel, a functioning chapel called the Union Chapel, which
sounds like Paul Stacey's place.
Bit like that. But anyway, this it's a large music venue, and but they have a rehearsal studio or a few rehearsal studios downstairs. Anyway, so they were rehearsing in there. And I took my guitar in, and I could see Sting in the corner, I don't know, looking at his laptop, answering emails or whatever he was doing. So I just thought I'd leave him alone. And I just was standing there, and he, like, after about 5 minutes, he got up from his chair and he walked up and he introduced himself to me, which was great. I didn't expect him to get up and walk across to me. And then we had a little chat, and then I went to see the musical director, and I just thought, I'll stand here with my guitar out of its case and warm up, and so that he can see that I'm here and I'm ready for whatever he wants to do, you know. And after a couple of minutes, he waved me over, and I went and sat down. And he said, "Oh, Carl, have you looked at this song and this song?" And we went through a few different things. And then I was playing one of the songs, and I felt this hand on my left shoulder. And then I felt a hand on my right shoulder, 2 hands on my shoulders. And then this head bobbed down next to me, and it was Sting's head. And he was like listening to me play with his hands on my shoulders, just kind of, you know, it's quite sort of
like intimate.
Yeah, it was quite
like
intimate, but it wasn't. It didn't make me nervous at all. I just felt really comfortable with him, and that's how I was with him, you know. And I even did some of my Buddhist chanting with him a couple of times, and the great thing was we had these charts, you know, all written charts for everything. And the best thing for me was that I do this sort of, there's quite a bit of it on that new album, the volume pedal delay chords with the chorus, you know. It's kind of one of my trademarks. And we were playing this song called Island of Souls, which is from his album The Soul Cages from 1989 or something. Really beautiful song, and I was doing these kind of wistful sustain chords on that, and he really liked how I did that. And then when we played his song When We Dance, which is this romantic ballad, he said, "Oh, okay, so when we do the first time through that, you play what's on the chart." And he said, "But after that, from there on, just do that sustain delay chord thing that you do, because that's really beautiful, and I want you to do that." So that was a big thing for me, is because he likes everything just so, you know, but he actually preferred what I did to what was written, and he asked me to just do that, you know, do my thing, sort of thing, rather than what was on the chart. So I was really happy with that, you know.
I got to tell you, I've interviewed probably 3 or 4, maybe 5, I think 4 players who've played with Sting. Ben, you now. Do you know Jeffrey Lee Campbell, who wrote the book Please Stand So Close?
I don't know.
Yeah, he's great. He's in New York, and he was a complete fuck up from at times when he was playing with Sting because he was out of control. He was drinking, and Lyle Workman, who played with Dominic and Sting, and every one of them have had nothing but just incredibly great. You know, they said he's incredibly gracious. Even Jeff, who was like really messed up at the times from time to time, he said he gave him so much rope. He was incredibly supportive musically, treated everybody like first class, and nothing but accolades about the experience and working for him. You know, Lyle was telling me, you know, he goes, and it wasn't bad getting on the private jet either.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I've heard nothing but good things. So, man, that's great. How long did that the last for the last show?
That was 4 months.
That's great, man. Really good. Talk about George Duke.
Well, George Duke was the Billy Cobham George Duke band. So they made one album in 1986 or 7. Billy Cobham George Duke Band live in Europe, which was quite a big selling album. And
you're on that record?
No. John Scofield was on it. John Scofield, yeah. And then when they re-released the album, Atlantic Records re-released it in 1998. Billy and George got me and Billy's bass player, Stefan Rademacher, at the time, to play, because we were the guys playing with Billy at the time, and we did that was just one concert.
Yeah.
It was a big concert at Montreux, you know.
It's really
and that
cool.
was really great. George Duke was really cool, really very easy to be with, very relaxed, and I was having trouble playing one of the songs, like really, really having trouble with it, because there wasn't much written on the page. It was just basically a funk groove. And I said, man, I don't know what to play. And he said, just play B flat. And I said, what? The note B flat? And he said, yeah. And so it was like, such a 3, 4. And I just did that. And I said, is that it? And he said, yeah, just do that. So I did, you know.
Yeah,
So
sometimes we're looking for the complicated solution, and it's oh, okay. Yeah, especially with guys of that level, you're thinking, what? Just one note? Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see
And he
that.
was cool, and he was open-minded, you know, like he had this kind of bluesy sort of tunes, really great tune. Can't remember what it's called, but it was there's a video on YouTube of Carl Orr guitar solo with George Duke or something like that.
Check that out.
That I played, and he wasn't expecting me to do what I did. Like, I started to play this kind of bluesy, rocky Jeff Beck type of solo, and he said, "Oh, you're going to do that then?" And I said, "Well, it's just what I naturally did." And he said, normally I have a more of a jazz guitar solo on that. And I said, "Oh, okay." And he said, no, but you just do that then. You know, it's like really, like he had this picture in his mind of how he wanted it. But because of my natural inclination to do what I did, he just went with that and said,
That's
we'll
really
do
cool.
that instead, yeah.
That's
And
really
it worked
cool.
really well, actually.
I'm going to look forward to it. So check it out on YouTube, Carl Orr, George Duke's, Carl Orr guitar solo, George Duke. Carl, you've played all over the world and in some great places. I was curious if you had like top 3 favorite places to play, or, you know, just venues where you, for whatever reason, you had a great experience.
Well, Ronnie Scott's is very high on my list because I played there more than 300 times, but also because of the history of the place. You know, so many greats played there. Miles Davis, he didn't play there, but he did a documentary film there. Miles, Sonny Rollins, Dizzy, Ella Fitzgerald.
Beck's got that famous concert.
Yeah, Jeff Beck, John McLaughlin. You know, so many great people and important people to myself and lots of other people. And I'm just very conscious of the history of the place. Bill Evans played there a lot, and there are pictures of you know, Dizzy Gillespie and, you know, for example, there's a picture of Dizzy Gillespie and Ronnie Scott playing chess back, you know, in the office, you know, and there's pictures of Sonny Rollins back in the 60s playing there, and all these amazing people. So for me, that's number one for me, because I've played so many gigs there, and just such a unique place in terms of history.
Is it hard to get in there? Like, if I knew I was coming to town and can I buy tickets in advance, or do you have to be invited? Like, what's the deal? How do you get in?
No, you can get tickets. Yeah.
Oh, anybody can go. Yeah. Even me.
Yeah. It's not exclusive in that sense. It's popular, but it's not exclusive.
Okay.
Yeah. And so Ronnie's, and then there's, that place where we played with Billy Cobham, that was the Miles Davis Auditorium at Montreux Jazz Festival. That was really amazing. That was one of the biggest gigs I've done. Big auditorium. I don't know how many people it seats, but that was really great, playing on a big stage. I loved doing that. And then the other one that really stuck in my mind is the Curium, Curium, Curium Amphitheater in southern Cyprus.
Oh, wow.
Where I played, and that's an amazing place. I played with Billy Cobham as well, which is an ancient amphitheater, outdoors, obviously, right next to the sea. And I remember played there on a beautiful warm night in this ancient place, you know.
That's really cool.
That was really amazing. I loved that. And also one more was the Teatro Romano in where was that place where Shakespeare lived in Italy?
Oh, I have no idea. Sorry, man.
Anyway, that was nice as well, whenever that place is called. Very cool. A lot of nice places, yeah.
Let's talk about your new record that's coming out soon, Somewhere Else. And like I said in the beginning, I loved the local world flavors and how you mixed everything with really cool music. And I just want to talk about a couple of the tracks. Analyze, which is funny because it's spelled like English with an S.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. So like Anne's from Dunstable, and she still makes spelling errors. And when she goes, they spell it differently in England. I'm like, babe, you've been here like 30 years. That excuse expired. That excuse expired 20 years ago, you know? I really like that song. It's got a great sort of like Mideastern vibe in the guitar, which kind of sounds like a sitar. Or was it a sitar?
That's a sitar.
Oh, it sounded great, man. Yeah. But it didn't sound, it sounded like modern. I don't know what you did or.
Yeah. Well, no, what it is that's a song by Tom York.
Oh, from Radiohead. Interesting.
I haven't recorded, I don't play many covers, and I haven't recorded many. I've only recorded 3. And I heard that song. I bought the album. It's an album called The Eraser.
Okay.
Which is a really great album. And I remember when the first time I heard that song, I bought the CD, and I was sitting in the car with my son. And it's the second track on the album. I remember sitting in the car, and that song came on. I said to my son, "Oh my God, listen to that melody! Isn't that incredible?" And I thought, I've got to play that song. And as a guy who writes a lot of music, I mostly just want to play what I write. I very rarely hear something and think I really want to play it, you know, as much as I might enjoy listening to it.
Yeah, of course.
And I thought, I've got to play that. It was such a compelling melody. And anyway, and I thought, well, actually, it sounds kind of Indian, the melody. It reminded me a little bit of one of those George Harrison type Beatles songs with the Indian flavor. And I thought, well, why don't I record it with a couple of Indians on there? So I got a sitar player and a tabla player.
The tabla sounds great, man. That sounds really good. Really? Yeah. So that's a Tom York record. It's not a Radiohead record.
That's
okay.
Yeah,
The Eraser.
Tom York, yeah. And it's got a bass clarinet solo on it as well, which you mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because what was a couple of things that were really cool. Maybe you could talk about them. There was one point where you switched from the sitar to electric, and it was seamless.
Well, yeah. I mean, what I did actually was I kind of, well, the engineer did all the technical stuff, but that we just got the sitar player to just play. And then what I did was I would just chop the sitar, edit it in and out. And like there was one point where the sitar did this phrase and it just naturally came to a finish. And then I just thought, well, I'm just going to put some guitar in there where he finished. And then I played guitar for a while. And then there was another phrase that was very nice. And I just stopped playing before the next phrase came in. So what I did was instead of just leaving the whole sitar solo intact, I sort of took a couple of chunks out of it and just picked out the best bits. And the bits where the holes were in the sitar solo, I played guitar. And then eventually, after the last bit of sitar, then I took over and did a full guitar solo.
It was great.
I was weaving in and out. And also, I've got a thing about, I'm not really interested in taking long solos on records.
I noticed that because I was kind of wanting a little more, to be honest with you, because the guitar sounded great.
Yeah, well, it's better than wanting a bit less, isn't it?
No, it's all. What is leave them wanting a bit more. That's always like get them coming back or something like that. Yeah. It's definitely better than wanting a bit less. But I noticed that. I'm like, God, I want more guitar here, man.
Good.
Yeah, it was great.
It's better than, oh my God, is he ever going to?
No, that's a great record, man. No, that'd be hard to imagine happening with you. What the guitar itself? What were you playing, and what was that overdriven part?
Well, that's my guitar that I use most of the time. My Gibson CS Custom Shop.
Okay.
336.
Okay. How is that different than a 335?
It's small.
Oh, so like a 339 kind of?
Well, 339 is made of the same wood as the 335, so it's the same thing but small. But the 336 is made of different wood. It's actually made of mahogany.
Oh, interesting.
But also the 339 and 335 are made of laminate.
Okay.
Whereas the 336 is a kind of carved out solid body. So it looks the same as a 339, but the construction is completely different. So the back and sides are a single piece of mahogany that's been carved out, but leaving a center block in the middle. And the top is a single piece of solid maple.
Where'd you get turned on to that?
Well, I just knew that I wanted to, because I'm a little guy anyway. I wanted a compact semi-hollow guitar. I wanted a good semi-hollow guitar, and I tried a bunch of 339s out, and I didn't like any of them for some reason. I just didn't like them, and then I went to, there's a beautiful guitar shop in Guildford, which is
that's where the teaching academy, I think, is.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
Academy of Contemporary Music. Yeah, I was working there, and I used to go to the music shop, and it's an amazing shop where stockbrokers buy guitars, and it's full of Taylors, and Martins, and Gibsons, and beautiful instruments. And they had a bunch of 339s there, and I tried all of them. I didn't particularly like any of them. I liked the idea of it. I thought, man, I love this idea of this, but I'm not in love with the guitar. And then after a few visits of trying all these guitars, the young guy who was serving me said, man, we got this as well, which you didn't notice. And I said, what's that? And he said, that's a 336. And I asked him, what it was, and he explained to me about the carved mahogany body. And went home on the train and I thought, man, I want that guitar. And I'd never even played it. And I just thought, I really want that guitar. And one of my students was working at the guitar store, and I rang him up and I said, James, are you working in the store tomorrow? And he said, yeah. And I said, will you tell them first thing in the morning tomorrow that I want that guitar? And I'm
without even playing it.
Without even playing it. And I'm going to come in and buy it on Tuesday. This was on a Friday night. And I just knew that I wanted that guitar. And I went in on the Tuesday morning, and they have this great thing in that shop where they got interest-free finance. So
that's great, man.
I put down a deposit of, I don't know, £400 or something, and then paid it off interest-free over 8 months. And anyway, I just picked up this guitar and I thought, yeah, this is it.
Is it red like a 335?
It's sunburst.
Sunburst. Okay, cool.
Yeah. It's the same sunburst as your Les Paul behind you.
Yeah, so I think they call it here T-burst or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, vintage sunburst.
Yeah, it's very cool, man.
And mine's a little more yellow than that, maybe, but yeah, so it's and it just, I thought, yeah, I like this guitar, and after a year or two, I thought, man, I really like this guitar, and then I thought, after like 3-4 years, I thought, no, this is the guitar I've been waiting for.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah, and I'm not like a prolific buyer of guitars, so that guitar on that Tom York tune, the electric guitar, is that Gibson, which I use most of the time. I do nearly all of my gigs on it. I use a couple of other electric guitars as well for different things, but 95% of the time I use that one.
With the 336. What were you using to get the distortion? Was that just the amp and the volume pedal?
No,
or amp and a volume? Or
I use a pedal.
What were you driving? Overdrive there? Yeah,
it's called a Blue Boy overdrive pedal made by MI Audio. MI is the initials of the guy who owns the company, Michael Ibrahim. MI Audio, and I've been using his pedals for about 15 years, and I also use one of his amplifiers. So that beautiful sounding amplifier, which is on every track on that album with the electric guitar, is that's one of his amplifiers too.
Is he out of the UK?
In Sydney.
Oh, he's in Sydney.
Australia. Yeah, handmade amplifiers.
Very cool, man.
Yeah,
it sounded great. The tone on that was amazing, man. Really cool.
Yeah, So the rest of the album, I use that guitar, and then I played a Strat on the tune Blue Boy.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that in 1 second. I want to ask you about that song. Was that it was a bass clarinet or an oboe? What was it?
It's a bass clarinet.
What made you stick that in there, man? 2 questions. What made you stick that in there? And did you write that melody, or was that improv by the player?
No, that's improvised. That's played by, I've got this friend who's a great musician in London called Graham Blevins.
Oh my God, that's such an English name.
Well, he's actually Australian, but it's a very Scottish name. Maybe.
Graham Blevins.
Yeah, anyway, Blevins. Anyway, and he's a phenomenal musician. He plays kind of like in the modern style of like Michael Brecker, you know, that sort of ferocious modern tenor saxophone sound, you know. But he's a hell of a musician. And I wanted a bass clarinet solo. And I thought, oh, I'll ask him to do it. And I've never heard him play the instrument. But I just knew he was the guy I wanted to do it, you know, because he's such a phenomenal musician. And I asked him, I said, man, do you play bass clarinet? And he said, oh, a little bit. And I said, you fancy doing a solo for me? And he said, yeah, man. And he just did the most impeccable job.
It's haunting. It's perfect. Yeah. What like popped in your head to say, okay, I need a bass clarinet here? Because that really interests me.
Well, I always like Miles Davis's Bitches Brew album, you know. And Bennie Maupin, who I wound up playing with, plays bass clarinet on it. So there's all this kind of madness going on of John McLaughlin playing amazing stuff on the guitar, and Chick Corea and Herbie playing together, and a couple of drummers, you know, and it's like all this stuff going on. And then Bennie Maupin playing bass clarinet, just playing very calmly, beautiful melodies, just with all this kind of crazy stuff around him, just this calm, sort of quiet, focused presence in this beautiful, amazing kind of mad landscape of music. And the bass clarinet really struck me. And then I wound up touring with Benny, doing a UK tour about 5 or 6 years ago. And he played bass clarinet quite a lot. And the bass clarinet's really quiet. So we had to like come down to a very quiet volume level to play those songs. And there was something about that quality where you're playing in a place, a jazz club or a concert hall with hundreds of people, and it's just quiet as a whisper.
Yeah, it's very guttural because of that. It really, like, you got to pay attention, you know. And
yeah,
he did. I wanted more. That was another one. I wanted more of that. I didn't want. Yeah, I really. That was.
The other thing.
I was kind of pissed, actually.
Well, but the other thing that I realized, I played acoustic rhythm guitar on that. I played that album's got a lot of acoustic rhythm guitar on it, because I love the texture of it. And when I do it, I always overdub it at least once, playing in unison, so you get this quiet presence of acoustic guitars. I did it on at least 3 tracks on that album, and I did it a lot on the previous album as well. Just strumming acoustic guitars mixed very low in unison, and I did it on that album as well. On that song, Analyze, just very quiet acoustic guitars, low in the mix. And I realized it reminded me of one of my favorite moments in pop music, which is Walk on the Wild Side by Lou Reed.
Yeah.
Just got these strumming acoustic guitars, very quiet, with a baritone sax solo over.
Oh, that's right. Right.
Phenomenal baritone sax solo.
It really is.
Really like a hardcore, top-notch jazz solo
Very much.
On this sort of crazy pop song. And I realized that actually it kind of was very much like that, like this very low-end woodwind instrument with the strumming guitars. And I realized that subconsciously I was recreating that in a kind of abstract way as well, you know.
It worked great, man. That was one of my favorite parts of the whole record, that song. But that solo was haunting, man. He was like nailed it. It was just perfect, man. Really, really good. Great job on that. And then you mentioned the other song I wanted to talk about, funny enough, was Blue Boy. It's a beautiful, beautiful bluesy ballad. Great guitar lines. I thought your sense of, the sadness and the emotion in the music was really beautiful. You know, I tend to be attracted to, darker and bluesier stuff, because for me in music, hearing that is like a way through that darkness for me anyway, when I listen to music. Listening to blues or darker stuff, I don't like sit in it. It gets me through anything that's going on like that. And then you had a great, powerful climax in there. So just maybe talk about that song. And do you tend to write like that, where you have these big climaxes? And
yeah, well, I do avoid certain areas, certain emotional areas of music. I'm very conscious about avoiding certain things. Like, for example, a lot of pop. I've played a lot of pop music over the years, and the thing that really sort of really turned me off, really turned me off playing pop music is so much of it is about bloody heartache and relationships breaking up and longing for somebody and all of this. It's like, man, let me bloody think about something else. I just find it really got on top of me. I used to play with this quite well-known pop singer in Australia, and the songs are all about heartbreak. It's like, man, can we just leave it alone, And so there's that, and there's like very angry, aggressive music. I avoid that as well.
Yeah.
But so I try to like keep my music in an emotionally healthy area. So some of my music's quite uplifting and joyful, and some of my music is quite thoughtful, and it may be sort of sad, but it's never in a sense of woe is me. And I never.
Oh God,
really,
no.
Yeah, but I never have like a self-pitying feeling of woe is me in my music. So if something is sad, it's more like a general human feeling of empathy of sadness that we all go through. It's not me, my personal sadness.
Yeah.
So when I was writing that song, the title Blue Boy came about because I was thinking of the feeling I used to get when I was a little boy, which we all would have had, where, when you're a little boy or a child and you feel like you don't really have any control over anything, like your mum and dad dictate what you do, and you sort of have freedom within that. And I have a lovely family and everything, and I've got no complaints, but you don't have a lot of ability to govern your own life.
Sure.
And I remember that feeling when I was a little boy, feeling, well, I know I've got a lot to be thankful for, but feeling this sort of childish sort of sadness and frustration about life, that feeling of helplessness, of having no control. And I know this song doesn't have a childish sound. It's quite a grown-up sound, but I was actually trying to recreate that feeling of like a sad little boy, maybe just sitting by himself in the back garden, just feeling a bit lost. And when I was a little boy, I used to lie in the back garden on the lawn and look up at the sky and just look at the clouds. And, when I felt sad or lost, and I remember that feeling, just being a little boy in my short pants, like looking up at the sky, just feeling really kind of helpless. And I thought, I'm sure every child must feel like that, and I and as I said, I had a lovely family, nothing,
Sure. No
complaints there, but I was just trying to recreate the feeling of feeling just like a lost little boy, really. You know? Yeah.
You did a great job. That song is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, man. I really dug that. I listened to that several times. It was really dug it, man. And it's a great record. I want to just tell everybody, please check it out when it's coming out shortly after this interview drops. It's called Somewhere Else by Carl Orr, ORR. Just a beautiful record, man. I think you'll enjoy it. And go to his website, Carl, CARLORR.com to get it. Musically, and thank you for putting it out. I was really glad to listen to it, man. I really had a fun time and listened to it a couple of times. Sometimes I only have the time because I'm listening to so much music to listen to something once. I probably listened to some tracks 3 or 4 times. So it was really good, man. Thank you. Top 3 experiences you've had musically for whatever reason.
Well, when I was 22, I'd been playing the guitar since I was 12, and I'd made good progress, and really worked hard, practicing a lot, and from about the age of 19, I'd sort of pretty much dropped everything except playing the guitar. I was just playing and earning a living by teaching and playing a bit. But I was making good progress, but it never had any really dramatic revelation of, this is incredible, And then one time I was 22 years old, and I was playing with a band, and we were just rehearsing. And one of the guys in the band, Phil Coulson, he's a really talented guy. He's a great singer and a fantastic sort of blues guitar stylist, a very unique musician. And he was actually the stepfather of the singer-songwriter Sia. You know, Sia, SIA.
No, I don't know her. Sorry, man. I'm like
Sia's,
pop music idiot.
okay.
I'm sorry. I'm like, yeah.
Well, Sia has actually got more hits on YouTube than any other female artist.
Really?
So, anyway,
it shows you what an idiot I am. I mean, I'm just like completely like I'm like allergic to pop music for some reason.
Yeah,
I hate to
me
say
too.
this,
But anyway, so he is Sia's stepfather, and anyway, he was just such a great musician. I loved him, and I still do. And there was something about him that he just sort of brought out the best in me, you know. And we were just jamming, and suddenly I could do anything I wanted on the guitar. It was the most revelatory experience. I just could play anything, like as fast as I wanted and as crazy as I wanted. The guitar was just, I could just do anything I wanted with it. And it just electrifying. It was just like in my friend's house. I was like having this incredible experience. And from that moment on, it was like I'd unlocked the door to playing the guitar. It's like, here's the key. You've now got the key to playing the guitar, and just unlocked the door.
That's so cool. You know,
that was an incredible experience.
I feel like that sometimes for about 5 seconds.
Sure.
and then I get slapped back to reality when I can't hit the next note.
Yeah. Well, it was, sure. Well, I'm familiar with that as well. But, and then another one is, you know, certainly playing with Billy Cobham for the first time in Sydney when I never met him before, and we were just playing for the first. Well, we'd rehearsed, but I mean, he was a very new thing to me, you know. And I remember just feeling like I was just going to explode, you know. That was, yeah.
I was going to ask you about that before. I'm glad you brought that back up. Were you intimidated when you got that phone call and they said Billy Cobham's looking to play here? Because that took a lot of courage to just even say yes, to be honest with you.
Well, you know, and I'll tell you what, I'm really grateful. I wasn't intimidated. I just thought, yeah, this is right.
Yeah. Because
when I was about 15, I went to this record store in Adelaide called Umbrella Music, a secondhand record store.
Those are the best, man. You just spend nothing and walk out with everything. Yeah, and those are so cool those days.
And I remember one day I didn't really have any money to even buy anything, but I just would go and browse. And I remember seeing Mahavishnu Orchestra, Birds of Fire, and I remember picking it up and looking at it. And I looked at the back cover, and there were individual pictures of the musicians on the back. And the picture of Billy Cobham, I remember looking at it and thinking, he looks like a nice guy. I would like to be his friend and play in his band. And at the time I could hardly even play, but I remember looking at this picture of this guy and thinking, yeah, I want to play in his band. And I remember like saying to these friends of mine when I was about 17, you know, I'd really like to play with Billy Cobham. And they looked at me like, what is
yeah, like I'd like to play with Paul McCartney, you know. Yeah.
What drugs are you on, you know? And I just thought, okay, well, I'm not going to mention that again. And then I got this phone call, and I thought, yeah, there's a kind of.
I've been waiting for this call.
Yeah, I really had. And I never thought it was going to happen. But then there was a kind of naturalness and a kind of inevitability about it, you know.
That's you know, it's funny, man. I had a vision like that about a week ago that I was going to have Jeff Beck on my show. So I'm fully expecting to have Beck on my show. I don't know when or how, but I just had this vision. So whenever I get that phone call, it'll be very natural. So I totally get that, man.
I'm sure that.
I totally get that. That's really cool. But you seem like very open to sort of like the universe's messages that it sends you.
Yeah. Well, I think in the modern age, there's just so much distraction, the world we live in, you know, phones and computers and traffic and people everywhere, and there's so much, stuff, so much noise, if you like. It's very hard to actually listen to your gut sometimes, and I think it's one of the things about practicing Buddhism is that I just sit quietly and I listen to my instincts, and so when thoughts occur to me while I'm doing my chanting, I just think, yeah.
Yeah, you probably don't have your cell phone on when you're doing that, right?
No, not at all. No, there's nothing but just me. But I just, it gives me an opportunity to listen to my gut, And a lot of the things that I've done, decisions I've made, have been from those quiet moments of my Buddhist practice,
How long have you been a practicing Buddhist? Like, when did you start that?
34 years. I started practicing in Boston when I was at Berkeley. In 1984, the end of 84.
How did you get turned on to that?
I was always interested because I was a Beatles fan and I knew about transcendental meditation from the Beatles. And so that got me interested in that area. And I did transcendental meditation from when I was 15. And I wanted to read like books about Eastern philosophy and really get involved. And with transcendental meditation, there is no philosophy, or there wasn't at the time. I don't know if that's changed, but there were no philosophical books to read or anything. It was just purely the simple practice of meditation, which is fine. It did me a lot of good. But after about 7 years, by the time I was about 22, I was feeling I needed something deeper. And the trouble with transcendental meditation is that it's a business, And so I went to the meditation center and I said to this meditation instructor, look, I want a deeper practice than this. And he said, oh, well, you can pay for our advanced course. It's only like $125. And I thought,
but wait, there's more.
Yeah. And I just thought, this is not the answer that I was expecting. And I'm quite disappointed. Anyway, when around about that time, I started to have this recurring dream, which I don't know, I had maybe 4 or 5 times. And I had this dream about this Japanese monk, and he was chanting something. I couldn't hear what it was. And he was looking at some kind of scroll with Chinese writing on it. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but it was like hundreds of years ago. And somebody came up behind him with a knife, and they were going to knife him. And when this man got close, that he, the sound of the chanting just scared him off, even though this guy was just sitting there chanting. And the Japanese monk didn't even really know that it happened. He just sort of turned around and thought he'd heard something but wasn't sure and just kept on chanting, and I had this vision, this recurring dream, and I thought, wow, so there's this phrase that you can chant over and over that completely protects your life. And I was really sure about that. And I remember saying, I went to a party not long after I'd had this dream a couple of times, and I said to these friends of mine, so do you know what this phrase is? And they said, what? And I said, you can chant this phrase and it completely protects you. And they looked at me like I was insane. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to say this again.
This is a recurring pattern of yours. You tell people you tell people your visions, and they're like, what? Are you crazy?
Anyway, and then what happened was I was feeling very depressed. I'm very prone to depression. And anyway, December 1983, which was a few months after I'd told my friends I'd imagined this phrase that protected your life, I met up with a couple of musician friends of mine, and we were going to go out and jam somewhere we're going to come back to my house and jam. We'd met in town in Sydney. And I said, okay, so let's go back to our place then. And they said, well, actually, we have to do something first. And I said, what's that? And they said, well, we're practicing Buddhism and we want to do our Buddhist chanting before we go out. And I said, oh, great. And anyway, we went back to this guy's horrible little apartment in the red light district, you know. And he had this little scroll and a wooden kind of little wooden cupboard sort of thing, and he opened it up and they said, oh, do you want to try the chanting? And I said, yeah, I'd like to. And they showed me how to chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and I did it, and I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't think much of it, and it didn't occur to me that it was the chant that I'd been dreaming about, you know. And then I went to a few Buddhist meetings over the course of the next few months. I think I went to about 6 different things, just chanting and chatting with people. And then I went to Berklee College of Music the following August, thanks to the generosity of my parents. And I got very depressed being on my own in a
foreign country. Yeah.
Yeah. And as much as Berklee was really amazing, I was really depressed. And I thought, I've got to do something to cheer myself up. And I thought, what can I do? And then I thought, well, the most fun that I've had in the last year is when I went to those Buddhist meetings. And it's a Japanese form of Buddhism. So I thought, well, there's a lot of Japanese students here. Why don't I just ask them? Because 1 person in 10 in Japan practices this kind of Buddhism. So I approached a Japanese student. He said, no, I don't know about it. And then I approached another guy, said, no. And then the third guy said, yeah, my friend does that. Anyway, I said, can your friend drop a note in my pigeonhole? Because it's before cell phones, you know, drop a note in my pigeonhole with the address of the Buddhist center. And a couple of days later, this note appeared in my pigeonhole. And the Buddhist center was just about a 15-minute walk from my apartment. Anyway, I went to the Buddhist center and I did some chanting. And it was good. I felt really welcome. I thought, I'm really glad I did this. And then I went again a couple of weeks later and a couple of weeks later. And then I'd met this one particular guy who I'd seen each time there. And he said to me, look, why don't you just give this a serious shot, man? He said, I can see you're interested, but why don't you just really give it a serious shot and do it every day for a while and see what happens. He wasn't coercive, but, you know, wanted me
to. He was just encouraging you because it sounded like he thought you would be benefit from it.
Anyway, so I did. The next day I decided I was going to really take it seriously. And I chanted, not really expecting anything other than to feel somewhat more relaxed. But what happened was my depression completely disappeared. I'd been feeling really profoundly depressed, and my depression completely went. And I thought, wow, this is bizarre. And I went into college and my friends were saying, God, what happened to you, man? Have you got a new girlfriend or something? I said, no, I haven't. And I was too embarrassed to say that I was practicing Buddhism. Anyway, then the next day I woke up feeling, again, quite depressed. And I thought, well, I'll chant. And then I chanted and my depression disappeared again. And I thought, oh, really? And then I thought, oh, this is just a honeymoon period. I'll probably just sink back into depression again. And actually what happened is I would wake up every day feeling depressed, but every day I just completely obliterated my depression with chanting. And actually that's what I still do. Most days I wake up feeling pretty depressed and discouraged, and I just sit myself down and, you know, after having a shower and breakfast, and I sit and I chant, you know, for a while, and I just get rid of the depression. So I think if it wasn't for the chanting, I think I'd probably be, well, my mother said if it wasn't for Buddhism, I would have been dead a long time ago. She said I would have been dead by the time I was 30, you know.
So she noticed the difference in you once you started practicing.
She said it saved my life, and I agree, you know.
How long do you chant for?
Well, it depends. I mean, when I first started, it was like 5 or 10 minutes. And then I got, you know, because it's hard to bring something like that into life. And then about a half an hour. And then half an hour, like, you know, in the morning, and maybe 15 minutes in the evening. And now I do like a minimum of an hour. But that's, you know, there's no prescribed amount to do.
Sure. It's just what you feel. Right.
Yeah, so that's what I do. It's pretty rare that I don't get an hour done, you know. But it took me a long time to build up to that. You know, it took me years to build up to an hour a day, and it's purely out of personal choice. You know, there's nowhere in the Buddhist writings where it prescribes a certain amount to do every day. You know, it's just that suits me. You know.
A few questions for you. What does that mean? The chant Nam. What you said?
Nam-myoho Renge-kyo means I devote myself to the mystic law of the Lotus Sutra, which sounds pretty abstract. But what it is, it's showing thanks to the mystic law, which is the mystic laws, like the laws of the universe, like the flowering of plants and the tides and the earth revolving around the sun, and you know, all these mystical things, you know, the mystery of how we can actually talk to each other, you know, just like really having appreciation for the mystery of life.
Like the universe's functions is sort of.
Yeah, it's and it's called laws because these things work by laws, don't they? Like the law of gravity and, you know, the way the seasons work, you know, and
so it's basically like an acknowledgement of some, in a not I don't the word higher power. I don't mean it in the religious sense, but greater sense than us.
Definitely, it's not in a sense of a deity, but it's like giving thanks to life itself and to the universe itself. Sure. You know, and that's what the chant means.
If somebody wanted to, who's listening, pursue or get involved in this, what would be the first, or what would you recommend? Like, where do they go, or how do they start investigating this? Or
okay, well, one thing you can look at is there's a new series of American videos on YouTube which are just phenomenal, which are called Buddhist in America, and they're from people from all walks of life, from all different parts of the USA, who have transformed their lives through practicing Buddhism. Buddhist in America is the best thing you can possibly see.
Buddhists in America, okay.
I recommend it to everybody, and it's very modern, very new.
I'm going to look at that because, you know, about 5 years ago, I made a conscious decision to make eliminating stress, self-imposed stress. Because, I mean, sometimes shit happens to you, life. You can't control that. But I thought that I came to a realization that there was a good amount of stress in my life from me.
Sure.
Like worrying over stupid shit, or not being here, like right now, like looking backwards or looking forwards. And I sort of came to a conclusion that does not serve me very well.
Sure.
And so I'm always interested in, to be honest with you, looking at things that can further lower my stress, because my life is so much better, so much better that I've eliminated this. And I was so ready. I literally was like flipping a light switch. You know, I was so ready to do that, and it was very easy. You know, sometimes you just, you know, someone told me one time, it takes a lifetime to do something and it takes a minute to do something.
Yeah.
You know, so you go 50 years before that happens. But then it wasn't like, well, I had to work on this. I was like done immediately. And I said, no, we're done. But I like things like this that alleviate stress in some way, you know, I mean, obviously it means different things to different people, but what I'm hearing from you is it really helped you eliminate stress, you know? So
it's not just eliminate stress. I mean, the thing is, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is whatever you need it to be at the time.
That's what I like.
Yeah, well, I mean, for example, when I needed the courage to ring Billy Cobham, to call Billy Cobham up on the phone, I don't just naturally have that kind of courage. So I sat down and I chanted until I felt courageous enough to ring it.
Yeah.
You know, and when I had to meet Sting, you know, I chanted. And then, you know, another time that I chanted was when I met my wife, the woman who was to become my wife. My mother met her after I'd only been seeing her for a couple of weeks, and she said, "Carl, you have to marry her."
Really?
Well, she said, "Carl, you have to stay with her."
Right.
And she'd never said anything like that before. And I just chanted, and I thought, okay, the next time I speak to her, I'm going to ask her to marry me.
Really?
And, yeah, and this was in the days before cell phones, and she was actually away on a Buddhist course at the time, and I wasn't expecting to hear from her.
Oh, so you met in the practice of Buddhism together.
That's how I know her. Yeah,
that's really cool because
great thing to have in common.
Yeah, that is because you know there's so many I apologize, I don't mean to cut you off. You know how though one thing I'm so grateful for is like with this social media stuff, like. I think it's really important that you're social media compatible because like I see some people that are on social media all the time and I think, thank God. And I'm not, you know, I'm on like for what I have to for the show and, you know, a couple of things, but you know, I see some people like maybe 15, 20 times a day. And if my wife was like that and I wasn't, oh my God, that would be problematic. So I think that's a new thing now we have that like, you know, It used to be like, well, are you religiously compatible? Then it was like, are you religiously? And then how do you vote? And now I feel it's like, and you know, how do you want to raise your kids? How are you going to vote? And are you social media on the same page? Because that's big gaps, man. You know. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean. I was just thinking about. It's so great that you have that in common because it's so important to you.
Yeah. So anyway, what happened was I wasn't expecting to talk to my wife until she got back the following day. Then she called me from a payphone. And the thing is, I had made this resolution that the next time I speak to her, I'm going to ask her to marry me. And I thought that was going to be in person. But she rang me and I answered the phone. I said, "Oh, you rang."
She sounds disappointed.
Well, it's like I thought, well, I was going to ask her in person, you know. But I said to myself, you know, next time I speak to her. And she was like really confused, you know. And I said, well, yeah, actually, there's something I want to ask you. Anyway, and I asked her to marry me. And it was great, you know. And she said yes. And we'd only been seeing each other 3 weeks, but I just knew it was the right thing.
Oh, my God. That is wild.
Yeah, but I just, again, through the chanting, I just had the intuition to know this is right for my life, you know.
And how long have you been together now?
28 years.
Good for you, man. Congratulations. Yeah. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, so the chanting is whatever you need to be. So in that case, it was for courage. Man. Sometimes, like sometimes if I'm at a gig and I'm the band leader and I have to talk to the management and I have to make sure the musicians are all there on time and all of that, and just stress management, you know, and I find it's good for that, you know, and then, you know, so it is whatever you need it to be at the time, you know. And we also chant a lot for other people. Most of my time is spent chanting for the happiness of other people. It's not a self-centered practice at all.
That's cool.
Yeah, I chant for everybody, and you know, relatives, friends, neighbors, my kids, my wife, you know, everybody.
That's cool.
I spent a lot of time doing that, you know.
I think
happiness.
Yeah, I think what's important here is like some people do that like through prayer. I think what's important is the intention.
Absolutely.
You know,
I don't see it any different to praying for somebody in a Christian sense.
No,
it's the same. It's the same thing. Yeah. You know, it's a bit like saying the same thing in 2 different languages. You know, I don't really see any difference.
No, I don't either. That's great, man. Thank you. And thanks for sharing that. And I'm going to definitely check out Buddhist in America on YouTube. I had a question here. What were some of the low points or darker periods you've had to deal with? And I'm assuming some of this depression was probably some of that.
Well, definitely. And I mean, music is an unpredictable business. There have been times when I've had very little work, and then times when I've had more work than I can handle. Having more work than I can handle, that's fine. I'm quite okay with that. But when things are really quiet and you're not really earning much money, that's really difficult. Yeah. I've had many periods where it's been like that, The thing for me is that obviously I've got my Buddhist practice, but apart from that, I've got a family.
Yes.
I've got a nice wife and a couple of kids, and I don't take that for granted. But I do think it's really important for a musician to, as they say, have a life, I remember there's a couple of things that musicians said that really, really helped me with that. One was when I was at Berkeley, Chick Corea came in and did a master. We did a whole week at Berkeley, including a master class that I went to. And Chick Corea is a very wise man, and he gave a lot of advice about how to play great music, which was wonderful. But he also gave some fantastic advice about life itself. And he said, join the human race. Join the human race and have a normal life as a human being. So don't be just some musician living this weird life of just music, but be a human being. And, if you have a family if you want to do that, but just be like a normal person with a life, And I thought that was a really, really great thing to say. And certainly at the time I was living the kind of life that he was describing, of this weird little bubble of music and really not much else, That was really good. And then Wayne Shorter, the great Wayne Shorter, who's also a Buddhist, said...
Is Chick a Buddhist as well?
No, he's a Scientologist, actually.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but so Wayne Shorter said, if all you have is music, then you don't have music, which I thought was a really great thing. And and the other one that really influenced me was Herbie Hancock. Said, he realized at some point that you can't have music as your, let's call it religion, in the center of your life, because music, especially the music business, has too many ways of tripping you up and building up your expectations and disappointing you. You can't have that as the center of your life, So he said, music is what I do. It's not who I am. Yeah. And he said that, isn't that great? And he said that before he started thinking that way, he used to think that everything that wasn't music was dragging him away from his music. So he thought of himself as a musician 24 hours a day. And he said, whereas now I just think, this is a long time ago he said this, in the 80s. And he said, well, now when I help my daughter with her homework, I'm not a musician, I'm a father. And he said, and when I'm talking with my next door neighbor over the fence about computers, I'm not a musician then, I'm a neighbor and a friend. And he said, so when I'm doing these other things that are not music, I throw myself into them 100%. And he said, and the other great payoff from that is that now when I do work on my music, my concentration, my focus is much greater because I just give 100% to that. And he said, and then as soon as I walk away from the piano, I'm not a musician anymore. I'm this guy doing whatever that happens to be. And that was a massive lesson for me. And so when you said about going through dark times, I mean, most of the dark times I've had have been through the difficulty of the music business. I do find it, and we all find it really
Everybody does, yes.
And so having a family who make me laugh, my wife, my kids really make me laugh, and we have a great time and really encourage each other and really support each other. is great. And then also I throw myself into my Buddhist activities as well, and I study Buddhism and what have you. And so just having a life away from music, a very rich life apart from music, is a really it's the most important thing for me, you know. So nobody loves music more than me, but I think a big part of the reason for that is when I put the guitar down, I'm not a musician anymore. I'm just dad. And I remember a few years ago, I said to my daughter, how do your friends feel about you having a musician for a dad? And she said, we don't talk about our dad's jobs. I just thought, she doesn't care if I'm a musician. She just wants me to be a loving, funny dad.
Right.
Care what I do. She couldn't care if I gave up music and became a
basket weaver.
Yeah, she couldn't care, like she just wants her dad to be good fun and loving and encouraging. And that really made a big impact on me when she said that,
How old are your kids now?
My daughter is 24 and my son is 20.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Man, well, thank you for sharing all that. That was really good. Thank you.
Good.
Most important things you've learned about yourself throughout your career experience and life in general.
Okay. I think the most important thing is that being me as I am is good enough. I must say, this attitude that musicians have of hero worship, that was hilariously illustrated in Wayne's World when they encountered Alice Cooper,
Yeah.
We're not worthy. It's like, it was absolutely hilarious, but actually a lot of people don't learn the lesson of that, which is, you're good enough, and I'm you are good enough as you are. And that's been I know I've always been working on that, but I've truly got the sense of actually being me, being the musician I am, and not, because I'm not even though I have a rock influence style of playing, I've never really looked like a rock guy or anything. So I've never really felt totally at ease with that. And I don't really look like a jazz guy. I don't sit down on a chair and wear a suit when I play.
Yeah,
so I've always bit of an outcast. I don't look like a rock and roller, and I don't look like a jazz guy. I just thought, well, I'm just me. This is fine. This is perfectly fine, And what I found is the great musicians I played with, they just totally accept me as I am, and they like me as I am. And it's really just hit home really in the last 10 years of, well, yeah, it's okay to be this little short guy who's not really one thing or the other, but a bit of everything, and it's cool, and I've learned that in life too. I feel like sometimes I'm a kind of introverted guy, and one thing I learned from some great musicians is that you don't have to be Mr. Showbiz to be up on stage. Not everybody is Michael Jackson or
Steven Tyler or
yeah, and those people are all great, but it's not everybody, and I thought Eric Clapton was set a great example. He just said, well, I'm not going to jump around on stage because it's just not me, I want to be natural on stage. That was a good lesson for me. And Miles Davis too, he was a very introverted sort of guy, and he would just sort of get up on stage, dressed flamboyantly towards the end of his life, but he'd just get up on stage and sort of be the shy guy that he was without feeling like he had to be a great raconteur or anything like that, which he wasn't. He'd just get up there and be himself, and he wasn't particularly witty or whatever, but man, what a musician, and learning from these people, it's all right to be exactly who you are. But it took me a long time to learn that, well, me just being a kind of quiet guy who loves to play the guitar, that's perfectly okay, you know.
That is one of the most common threads that every musician I've spoke to has, because it is a very introvert. I mean, you got to be introverted to sit in your room alone for 10 hours a day for 5 years. Yeah. Let's face it. You know, if you don't thrive in that environment, you're not going to be a good guitar player.
That's true.
So that's a very common thread amongst people, you know. And I think in general, entrepreneurs, people that work for themselves, just maybe people in general, it takes it takes paying your dues, as you said, to finally get to that point where you say, you know what, I'm okay with me.
Yeah.
Happiest moment or time in your life?
Oh, the day I got married was the happiest day of my life.
Good man.
And I've been happy every day since.
I hear you, man. Your wife's from Australia as well?
Yeah. Newcastle, Australia.
There's a Newcastle, England too, isn't there?
Well, I'm from Newcastle, England.
That's what I thought. Is Newcastle on Tyne? Or is that like Geordie? Is that what they call
Geordie?
It?
That's what Sting is a Geordie.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
And the last ship that I played on is about the closure of the shipyards in Wallsend, Newcastle. And Sting is from Wallsend, and my father is from Wallsend. And my father worked in those shipyards.
Oh.
It's about. And Sting, worked as a school teacher before he was famous. And my mother worked as a teaching assistant at the school where he worked.
Wow, that's a lot of freaking moving parts there that are really close together.
So anyway, I'm from Newcastle upon Tyne, Geordies. And my wife is from Newcastle, Australia. Yeah, that's
wild. Like if this is modern day, after you told that story, you'd finish it with, so Sting and I are practically related, right? Outside of Buddhism, do you have any hobbies or interests outside of music, Carl?
Not really, man. I read.
Yeah,
I read every day. I like to read. I like non-fiction books, and I like a good novel. I like kind of reading about interesting aspects of humanity, not always the good side of people. I'm quite interested in people, So I like to read good books. Currently reading a novel called Alone in Berlin. I can't remember the author, but it's about the Germany in the Second World War. It's a very dark book. It's very illuminating about human society and character. But the other thing that I really like to do is as you do, my other thing I would describe as a hobby is I like to ask people about themselves.
Yeah.
Like if you just talk to your elderly next door neighbor and say, so what was it like growing up in Poland? And I just like to hear them tell me their story. That's something I'm very interested in.
Yeah, I am as well. It's just fascinating, I find. You ever read Haruki Murakami by any chance?
Yeah, I didn't like it. A friend of mine recommended something, and I read it. And I kind of couldn't finish it.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm not saying it's bad.
Oh yeah, it's like smoking a cigar or eating ice cream. It's like it's not your flavor. That's totally cool.
Couldn't get down with it. Yeah.
Toughest decision you've had to make, or most difficult thing you've had to do, besides this interview? Deciding to move here from Australia. That was big.
When my daughter was only 1 year old, that was really, really tough. Because I thought we probably should have done it before my daughter was born, But I just sort of got to the point in Australia where I thought, I'm really running out of options here. I don't know what I can do next. And I just kind of reached the point of more or less complete deadlock. and I just thought, we have to get out of here, you know. And so we left the country when my daughter was just over a year old, and my mother-in-law was not far from death. It was really terrible. It was terrible for my wife. You know, her mother didn't have very long to live, and we had a small child. It was extremely difficult. But then, you know, we came through, and everything's been fine, really good in the long run. But that was an extremely difficult decision to make.
I think those types of decisions are always, it's like leaving a relationship or leaving a job or going to the dentist even. Some decisions, like when the pain of not doing it is greater than you do. You know what I'm saying? If those are hard to see, that's like, you know, wake up one day and I'm sick of this relationship, I'm leaving, you know, usually, you know, stuff like that. And that's what happened with you. You were sick of the relationship with, you know, career wise with where you were.
Yeah.
Man, and last question, I got to tell you, I've really enjoyed every moment. You're a lovely guy, and I knew you put out like really good energy because I liked the first time we talked, and I you know, we're buddies on Facebook, and I like everything you write. So thank you. This is better than I expected, but I expected good things. So, biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of that has been intentional, and how much is just a natural part of aging?
Okay, I'll just read out what I've written. I am calmer and happier. I'm reiterating here. I've realized that having a happy family is the greatest thing in life. As I said, it's important for a musician to have a life. Right, which I've already said. Now, I haven't said this. I'm in my 50s now, and a lot of my friends have fallen by the wayside. Some are no longer with us. Others have been essentially disabled as a consequence of drug or alcohol use, maybe just in their younger years or maybe continuing on. And the other thing is some even really successful guys that I know have just kind of run out of steam. They've run out of inspiration. They still can play well, but they've kind of lost the spark to some degree. And I think this comes back to the thing of not getting a life, you know. Like I think, like for example, well, you mentioned Les Davidson before. He has a very rich social life, and he has a lot of friends, and he thrives on interaction with other people. He just has this incredible network of people that he has very good relationships with, you know. Anyway, I've learned to value that. So you asked me what's changed in the last 10 years. I think increased realization of the value of that, but also just valuing the fact that I'm even alive. There's a lot of people I know are not alive anymore, and some people died quite young. Just having appreciation for getting out of bed in the morning. And the other thing is, like, on a musical level, really, like I talked about being myself, I think the thing that I've really, really learned, which is a thing you don't hear often musicians talk about a whole lot, is that I've realized that actually the pursuit of beauty is the focus of what I'm doing. Now, there's different kinds of beauty. There's the sort of classic romantic type of beauty of like a Burt Bacharach song like Alfie, or you know, or a song like The Shadow of Your Smile, or one of these beautiful romantic songs about love which are beautifully written. There's that kind of beauty which you might call a romantic beauty, you know, and I do write songs which definitely are in that area. But then there's a beauty of, like you mentioned, that song Analyze, the Tom York song. It's got what I would call a kind of savage, kind of more raw sort of beauty about it, but it's still, I'm still chasing a kind of beauty. And I think you know, there's some guitarists that I've noticed are very sort of, let's say, beloved, more than other guitarists. And you mentioned Jeff Beck is probably the most sort of beloved guitarist of modern times. And I think, what is it that sets Jeff Beck apart? And I think actually what it is not all the time, but Jeff Beck certainly is in pursuit of beauty. Like when you think of Jeff Beck, the first things that people think of usually are that song Where Were You? You know, that haunting, amazing thing that he plays with the harmonics on Jeff Beck's Guitar Shop, which just almost makes you cry when you hear it. Or they think of Goodbye Pork Pie.
That's what I think of, man, because I'm of that age group where Wired and Blow by Blow is like,
absolutely.
But, what is this, man?
Yeah. So what you think of is actually when Jeff Beck is explicitly going for beauty.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, 100%.
And other guitarists who are known for that, like Wes Montgomery, is a greatly beloved guitarist, right? He's so well loved. He's like, out of all the jazz guitarists, he must be the one who's the most loved,
I would say.
But if you ask people how do you describe Wes Montgomery's sound, most people would say, oh, it's beautiful. You know, so Wes Montgomery's this kind of very blue collar guy, you know, working class guy, but he was pursuing beauty, you know, and sometimes it was a quite very earthy kind of macho blue collar kind of noble beauty. And sometimes it was a kind of romantic beauty, you know, but it was a pursuit of beauty, you know. And I think the thing that I've really learned is these people who are very beloved musicians, you know, the Beatles. When you think of the Beatles, you think of songs like I Will or Blackbird. And they're really beautiful songs, you know, and I think it's not something we sort of talk about in the sort of macho world of guitar, but I think this thing that makes some musicians really have this extra level of being more well-loved than other musicians is that pursuit of beauty. Bill Frisell is a modern-day example of that. He's kind of the most well-liked guitarist, I suppose, of modern jazz at the moment. But I think that's why, you know, because he pursues beauty in many different forms, you know. And so that's musically the biggest thing that I've learned is that there's many forms of beauty. Some of it's rough edge, some of it's quite, you know, down to earth, and some of it's very romantic and whispering and soft. But even Hendrix playing the Star Spangled Banner is a kind of furious kind of beauty about it, you know. And there's a thousand different kinds of beauty, but I've realized that's what I'm pursuing, and I realized that is the thing that people really like the best, you know.
Well, if Somewhere Else is any indication, man, you have pursued it and nailed it, so congratulations there, man.
Thank you.
I can't thank you enough for everything. This has been really cool to talk to you. Thank you, man. I want to tell people where to find you. It's Carl Orr, Carl, Carlorr. A few things. Carl's last record is called Forbearance. It's an acoustic album. His new record that's coming out really shortly after this drops is called Somewhere Else. Listen to it. Order it. It is a great record. He's got some just really beautiful, that's the best way to say it, stuff on there, man. His website is carlorr.com, carlorr.com. You could also find his music on Spotify and Apple, but if you're going to buy it directly from Carl. He's on Facebook at Carl Orr Music. He's going to be at Ronnie's, June 7th and 8th. If you are in the UK, Billy Cobham is opening.
Sure.
Billy's opening for Carl at Ronnie Scott's, man. So get your freaking tickets right now because they're going to sell out. And also, if you're in the UK or out of the UK and you are looking to get lessons with a super brilliant composer and a beautiful jazz rock player, go to Carl's website, carlorr.com, and hit him up through the contact form there. He Skype lessons or in person in the North London area. Please be at least an intermediate player and up. If you don't know how to play a G chord, probably not a fit. But if you're, jazz oriented, or just you're looking for constructive, compassionate teacher to help you move forward, he's definitely a guy you want to check out. And Patreon, you're doing some stuff on Patreon that'll be available soon. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm just figuring it out, but I'm starting out with some solo acoustic guitar pieces, so I'm practicing them now, and one by one, as they're good enough, I'm videoing them.
Very cool.
That's going to be the starting point. I don't know what's going to happen from there, but starting off with solo guitar pieces.
Awesome. So stay tuned to Carl Orr's World Domination on Patreon, coming out any day now. Hey, man, did I get everything? Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Man, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Any final words of wisdom? Or chaos, whichever you prefer.
Well, the important thing is, enjoy playing. And take music seriously. Don't take yourself too seriously. Don't take life too seriously. Have a laugh. Get a life. Enjoy the sunshine. Go for a walk. Watch a movie. All of these things are going to enhance your music. Don't just live in a kind of weird world of music, like as I was advised myself. I think it's great advice. And, take an interest in something other than music, even if it's whatever it is, gardening or golf or basketball, whatever it is, just do something else. So you're not living in a claustrophobic little bubble, and enjoy every day,
Well said. And thanks again to Les Davidson for connecting us. Everybody, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this interview, please share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Many thanks to Carl Orr for spending time with us. Support Carl's music. Go to his website, carlorr.com. Check out Forbearance, and the new record, Somewhere Else, is absolutely amazing. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get on our newsletter list so you and I can connect. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, right? Go play your guitar and have fun.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.